We see so many stories on television about ghosts. I love every one of them. I love anything about ghosts. I've always been interested, even as a kid, my sister will tell you, I would scare them as well. There's one program that I watch called The Dead Files. Cheryl loves it. She won't watch it at night. She'll watch it in the morning, usually on set. She tapes them. It's interesting. It's an interesting TV program. One guy's an ex-detective from New York, a real New York guy, including his accent. And the other one is a medium of sorts, and she gets things right, I have to say. And they help people with problems that they're having in their home. But today's Gospels is not about ghosts really at all, although it talks about them. They thought that Jesus was a ghost. But of all the times that I read this Gospel, I didn't realize that Jesus is kind of saying, yeah, there are ghosts. I'm not one, but there are ghosts. And I've read this Gospel over and over again in the last 40 years, and I never picked up on it. But, in fact, there probably is, and Jesus kind of gives some credence to it. But that's not the important part of this Gospel. The important thing of this Gospel is whether we believe that Jesus Christ came to them in flesh and in blood. This Gospel picks up from the road to Emmaus. The road to Emmaus is very interesting. It goes along a road, meets two people after the crucifixion. They start walking with him. They don't recognize who he is. They don't know who he is at all. But he asks them, what's going on? What's going on? And this is just before this gospel that we are reading today. And the two guys say, geez, haven't you heard everything that's happening in Jerusalem? Haven't you heard a thing about it? You must be the only one, it says, that has not heard what happened to this Jesus. So he says, well, tell me about it. So they tell him the whole story. And they say to him concerning this man named Jesus, he said that the chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death. Jesus knew the whole thing. It happened to him. But he wanted to hear it from them. And then they said to him, a couple of women went to the tomb on top of all this, and it was empty. And the women said they saw two angels who said that he was alive. One really interesting thing in the gospel today, did you notice it? Jesus says, I'm hungry. That's really, that struck me when I was reading that this week and again this morning. A ghost would not be hungry at all, or a spirit would not be hungry. But Jesus is hungry. And it really shows the fullness of his humanity. And of all things, they offer him a piece of fish. And he eats it. He eats it right in front of them, it says. So he stayed with them a little while. And at the end, when he was at table with them, he did much like we are going to do in a few minutes. He took the bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. And then, the minute they ate, the minute they were sitting all together, their eyes were open. And they recognized who it was. And the minute that they recognized that it was Jesus, he vanishes in their midst. So this is the central message of Easter. Not that Jesus came back as a spirit or a ghost, or that he even vanished after the Eucharist, but that he was truly flesh and blood. And all of the Old Testament writings, and Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms were all about him. Everything led to him in the Old Testament. But although the disciples knew who Jesus was, they were with him for 3 years, they didn't recognize him on their way to Emmaus. They knew all about him, but they didn't recognize him. They'd been witnesses to all the things that happened in Jerusalem And they heard, no doubt, on many occasions that Jesus had testified to these things about himself, yet they were not able, when they looked at him, to recognize him. I think today we're kind of in that same boat. We see people in our lives who could be Christ. They come to us. And some of these people are in need. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's time, sometimes it's just a listening ear. And these people come to us, and sometimes we're busy. But do we see Christ in that person? And sometimes it's tough, especially if you don't have time or you don't particularly like the person. It's very hard to see Christ in someone that you don't like. But this could be Christ coming to you. And until our eyes become less blind, we do not see Jesus. We do not see Jesus. They understood who Jesus was when he opened the scriptures to them, showing all the things in the Old Testament. It was when they had fellowship with him, you notice they didn't recognize him until they gathered around that table. That's very central to this gospel. They gathered around that table and they ate with him. And then he connected with them. Their eyes were now open to all the truth of his words through those 3 years. Do you know Jesus this morning? Do you know him this morning? Do you see him in the people that you work with? Do you see him in your spouse? Do you see him in people who aggravate you through the day? Have your eyes been opened this Easter for what he has done for you and the life that he's given you? And that old saying, we hear it time and time again, year in and year out. You have a relationship with him, any sort of a relationship with him, besides being here on Sunday. Has your experience with him been so real and so moving and so tangible that it's been life-changing for you? Are you able to talk to Jesus each and every day? And most importantly, are you able to talk to others about Jesus each and every day? As we continue with our celebration of the Easter season, it hasn't ended yet. It's ended in the stores. The bunny rabbits are gone, and the flowers, as you see, are starting to wilt. And the Easter eggs in the mosses are gone off the shelf. But we continue with that Easter spirit each and every day.